TVOT.
This panel is going to look at TV advertising as a real-time medium. And I have the pleasure of introducing Lori Schwartz, who will be moderating this panel. So thank you.
Okay, so we're ready to rock and roll? All right, rock on. So just to start off, we have we're down one man, but that just means that our other four-man get to be more mannish during this. So Seth Haberman couldn't join us due to some red-eye fracas. But most of our panelists have worked with Seth in Visible World, so they're going to represent. And definitely one of the things that I'm really fascinated about right now as a marketer is real-time content, what's happening in real-time online, but also as it starts to affect the television industry, and also from an advertising side, how do we manage advertising in this real-time world? So we're going to talk about a few things surrounding that, and because we're in a small room, love it if you guys would raise your hand if you have a question to ask as things come up, and we've also encouraged our panelists to ask each other questions and ask you questions, so you're all going to be put on the spot throughout this. But just to sort of set the stage for this world, because a lot of the reason that I'm thinking about real time all the time is just some of the recent news, and we were just chatting about the whole announcement of bin Laden and how that came around the world through the social web and not through the more traditional broadcast means. And that YouTube is now launching a whole new content network. In fact, they just announced today that they're launching a new channel that's focused on Congress debates, and they're calling it the YouTube Town Hall. Also, Facebook is now becoming an on-demand service for many studios. And then another interesting piece of news is there's a new London investment firm that is going to be using Twitter in order to make some of its hedge fund decisions. So there's a lot of things bubbling up in this real-time space that's starting to affect content. So we have a great panel of folks that are all working in the advertising space, broadcast and broadband and that convergence. So we're going to introduce them now. So we're going to be starting with Jeff Sherwin. And Jeff is, hold on one second, please. Oh, yeah. Sorry. Jeff is, just because of the shuffle, I'm not as organized. Jeff is president of This Technology, and This Technology gives cable operators and networks complete visibility and control over digital content and advanced advertising inventory. And Jeff is really an innovator in the metadata space, and talking to him just opens up your mind about all the opportunities, the things that are being left on the table. So Jeff, you want to tell us a little bit about what you're up to?
Sure. Thank you. So we provide a series of tools that allow networks and operators to use their existing broadband ad-serving technology to work for dynamic ad insertion within a service provider environment. So typically, advertising technology has been traffic and billing systems or sort of closed campaign management systems within the cable infrastructure. But most of the broadcasters and a lot of the operators, in fact, have broadband ad servers where they have teams of people that work on trafficking dynamic ad insertion, addressable ads for online video or online display. And our software allows them to manage the inventory splits, the permissions, the ad load around the video that they're already pitching or is already in place in the service provider, and then connect the decision-making capability of those broadband ad servers into the pumps and streamers within the MSOs.
Fantastic. Next we have not Michael Hudes from YuMe, but we have Frank Barbera from YuMe, who is the SVP of Emerging Platforms, and Frank's really working on product development on emerging platforms in mobile, and he's going to tell us a little bit about what YuMe's focusing on.
Sure. YuMe is one of the largest digital video platforms in North America with multi-channel capabilities, so we're delivering ads online, on mobile devices, and now on connected TVs and in television environments. We also have a network that helps brands meet their goals through our publisher ecosystem, and utilize the platform to do that.
Great, thank you. Next, we have Harvey Kent, who is the Chief Media Strategist for DDS. And Harvey, why don't you talk to us about DDS, because a lot of people
Thanks,
know
Lauren.
about you in a different way.
I noticed that I got the word out that an actual spending agency was leading this panel. I see people starting to pour in, which is great. Chief Media Strategist, I'm using a cheat sheet, sorry. Donovan Data Systems, we're the leading software and systems provider to the advertising or the media advertising agency business. We're the 800-pound gorilla. We're big. We process about 7 million media transactions a day. 2010, we did 80 billion of media spend through our systems. And I do want to say thank you, Laura, for getting this panel on the second day, because that meant that last night I was able to go out and get an over-the-calf pair of socks, which is very important. Never mind.
Media people are very self-conscious about style.
All right. So 40 years, DDS has been around 40 years. Our mantra is innovation, reliability, service. We have always worked in collaboration with other vendors, industry groups, of course our agencies. We help to create business processes. From those business processes, working again with the trading partners of our agencies, we design e-business systems. We're known for that, typically lead in it. And once we're done with that, we build systems unmatched for their efficiency and effectiveness. It all starts with getting the business process right, which I've heard about in every single session today, and getting some e-business around them. Now, thinking about this panel, I think we play the most important role when there's disruptive change in the advertising media ecosystem. So I'd like to give you guys an example of what I think is the first disruptive change or in audience fragmentation, and we can thank Ted Turner for that. That was the beginning of cable network. It was actually referred to in the first panel today by a couple of the guys up there. So this was when eyeballs started to go other places. And a few years after Ted had the Superstation down there, there was actually enough eyeballs that our buyers wanted to buy that. Here was the problem. There was a 100-to-1 ratio of media transactions in cable network as there was to over-the-air network. So we start to participate and eventually lead, work with the CAB, work with other cable networks, work, of course, with our agencies. We get standards going. We design systems around them. We have a hub in place. There's a directory in place. $11 billion of cable network was transacted in DDS systems last year. All orders, all invoices, 100% automated.
That's fantastic.
But it started with that. Guys, disruptive change was every 5 years. Now it's every year. Digital side, you look at display, you look at, now you got audience-based display, you look at search, look at the numbers in search, you look at mobile, you look at Facebook. That was some presentation by that guy today, but my favorite story is...
Wait, hold the story, because let me introduce the rest of the panel.
Sorry.
But I don't want to...
But he's got notes. He's got notes.
I don't want to discourage you because it's good
Page one
stuff.
notes.
And Harvey has been doing this a long time, so he's really an expert in the field. Next, we have Jeff Siegel, and Jeff and I have been on many panels together, and he is the Senior Vice President of Worldwide Advertising for Rovi. And you've been at it about a year with Rovi?
Yeah, a little less than a year.
And then before that, Jeff was at InSequence, which many of you might be familiar with, another very important partner in the interactive advertising space, and then also developing ad models in the advanced space for ESPN.
Right. Right. So now at Rovi, our legacy really is we have metadata and technology, and we've got 50-plus years of our metadata for books, music, movies, all kinds of stuff. We license that to service providers. We license it to CE manufacturers. And that's really given us a foothold in this space to develop this ad network, which we've now got and we've been focused on for a couple of years. And this ad network includes a number of digital properties. It includes the guide technology with service providers, the ad-enabled guide, and then it also is now in the CE space. So we are the connected platform system, if you will, for Samsung and Sony. We've announced those two to date. We just announced Sony last week, so it's been very interesting for us.
Well, so I wanted to start really the conversation between these guys And again, Harvey, you keep coming when you're ready.
Oh, I'm ready.
So
I just got
look.
6 more pages.
Oh, well, good. We'll have time. Jeff, just looking at Rovi, starting with the guide, and now you're expanding out. Harvey, based in, data and providing infrastructure. And then we have YuMe, which is really culturally from the broadband video delivery side. And then we have this technology. You're really bridging the gap between managing broadband and broadcast. So in this world right now where disruption is everywhere, where are you guys taking your companies in terms of that, merger between broadband and broadcast? Like, what are you guys doing about that? How are you, moving forward?
Well, I would say for us, it's really in our sweet spot, because as content becomes more proliferated, there's more of a need to search and discover content. And for us, that feeds right into the ad sales model. And so we find that more and more people are using their guide on the cable operators, and that's certainly starting to hold true for the connected space as well. You now have really unlimited content that you can watch on your connected device, and the first thing you want to do is find out what you want to watch and then get recommendations for new things to watch.
So, and I'd speak from an advertiser perspective in that, I think more than just even the opportunities for engagement is the opportunities for efficiency in ad spend, and trying to understand exactly, where the media consumption is happening cross-platform, and then being able to tune a media plan to that is what we're hearing from advertisers. So what we're doing is trying to give advertisers the tools to help them understand where their audience is and how they can best and most efficiently reach their audience, so then they can drive greater impact and engagement over time.
So if I came to you, Jeff, as an advertiser, and I said I want to buy an ad and stick it everywhere, you could do that for me now with the guide?
Yeah, we're doing that now. I mean, we start with the advertiser experience, so it depends on what the advertiser wants to do. If that's video, if that's some kind of microsite, some kind of deep, rich experience, we can give that to them on the web properties, we can give that to them on the guide, leading from a banner within the guide, and we can now give that to them in scale on connected devices.
And then YuMe, when I think of YuMe, anyway, in my experience, I think of, getting display advertising everywhere. But now you're also getting into the chipset, you're getting onto CE devices.
Yeah, we're trying to make the best experience for consumers at every device, and that requires, if you saw our Intel deal that we announced in Q4 last year, getting our ad platform in the system on a chip that ships on Intel Atom processors. So that's going to make a very efficient ad delivery mechanism then for all the alternative devices. But we are very much coming from the broadband world, the online video world, where there is scale of buying and scale of dollars from a digital and traceable perspective, going to mobile now, which we also have at scale, and mobile includes tablets and mobile phones as well, and then connecting with where Rovi's playing as well as in connected TVs and connected devices, so Roku boxes, Xbox, TVs themselves.
Got it. So you're moving coming more from broadcast to broadband. You're moving broadband to broadcast, and then Harvey and Jeff, let's talk about what you guys are up to help start to bridge some of that.
Right. So
here we go, ladies and gentlemen.
It's simple.
Page 2.
DDS has basically turned itself on its head. We've always developed great systems around business processes that exist, but every single panel today, every one, people have talked about, and we're waiting on the business process, and we're waiting on agencies and their marketers, their advertisers, and the different sellers to figure it all out. Guess what? There's no figuring it out. We got 90 people working on a product called iDesk. It's the first interoperable open system DDS has ever written. We've talked to over 40 vendors just in the last 6 months. Our agencies cannot rely on DDS to be soup to nuts everything like they could in traditional media. In fact, your agency loves to differentiate themselves based on a lot of their technology partners. But they got to have a media plan. They got to be able to get invoices in, pay those invoices, bill their clients, and give me a call, get my card. We're talking to everybody. From the metrics point of view, as important as interoperating different parts of the transaction, any kind of data that you want to take in, sitting on the same buy lines, good old buy lines, or placements, if we like to call it that, different data, different engagement metrics. How do you want to charge? Work it out. But the buyers have to have it in one system so they can look at it all. So very exciting.
You're constantly then having to innovate.
Yes, we have to have a system that can innovate without us having to write a new system. July, it'll be live. Pretty cool.
And you, sir, you're doing some really interesting stuff really embedding into the ecosystem?
So we started really just managing ad-supported metadata and just providing a series of tools that would make ad-supported content be easy and efficient to distribute, as opposed to just using the existing systems, which were really focused on subscription, premium video, and transactional content. And what we really found that the need was in managing the inventory, how much advertising space the networks wanted to retain and how much advertising space they wanted to make available to their service provider partners, and what that content experience was like, under the assumption that the traffic and billing systems that were out there that were being used and the campaign management systems that were emerging within the service provider environment were going to pull in that feed and use that, and leveraging cable labs and SCTE, which are standard setting bodies for MSOs. We were able to prove that really worked across a variety of different systems that had competitive advantages. But the networks weren't coming up to the plate because they really wanted to get the business going now. They wanted a business model that would allow them to monetize their VOD content and the IPTV content. And they just wanted to use their existing broadband ad servers to do that because they didn't need to swivel chair into a new system. They didn't need to pay, get new deals to serve those ads. And so all we did was provide a technology that would simply connect that. And so that's where we're at now. We open source that software so that any ad server that wanted to enter the space could enter that space and start using it in a service provider environment. And now where we're going is we're finding that, okay, just serving billions of impressions is useful, but the MSOs have data, the networks want certain data for making real-time ad decisions, and there has to be a way to package up that data to allow the MSOs to control that data to flow and allow it to flow up to certain networks who are willing to pay those premiums. And so now we have a series of plugins on top of that open source platform that's making that possible.
So I know from the advertiser side that the whole multi-platform thing is a real headache. Because we're siloed up into digital and traditional and creative and media buying. So what are you guys hearing from advertisers? And I don't know, Jeff, if you're dealing directly with advertisers or if it's really the cable companies that are your clients.
Yeah, my customers are the MSOs and the networks.
Okay, so for you guys, what are advertisers saying to you that they want in this time of flux and change?
I mean, right now it's help, right? So you're going to get a lot of experimental buys in the connected TV space early on. I mean, buying always, whenever new platforms emerge, it always goes into this like camel hump, right? Where there's a little small hump where you see some experimental buys happen, and then they want to see real metrics, and it ends up kind of like can wane off after that. But then it picks up once the reach and the frequency and the engagement starts to become standardized and measurable, and their agencies have the ability to like track and create assets that are replicable and scalable. And we're a long way from that in a sort of a multi-platform type campaign world that everything's kind of siloed out. So what the advertisers, and they talk to us, and we deal primarily with brand advertising, so it's video as the core, and we're always talking about brand messaging that is tied to some engagement or action at the end. But what they say, how can you make it, when does it get easy and when does it get scale? And part of the scale is a measurement and some standardization around their asset.
I'd find from the advertising side that they want scale, they want creative help, and we've built out a creative team almost out of necessity, because when someone places an ad buy with us, we not only build it out for the operators, the cable operators, but we also build it out now for the multiple CE devices that we're the platforms for. So they come to us and say, here's how we want the experience to look, and I think they're surprised at the amount of scale that we have at this point. I mean, by the end of this year, we will have 6 million plus connected devices in market that we're selling ads on and we're the platform for. By the end of the next year, it probably will be triple that. So it's happening quickly, and then you marry that with the guide and everything else, we start to have a pretty compelling interactive universe. And we try to stay in the television buckets because we sell it like television. We day part, we flight, we post. We're a 10-foot experience, and that's really resonated with the advertisers.
And which, I know we talk about this all the time, but which side of the agency is coming to you? Are the digital folks coming to you and the traditional coming to you? Or are you seeing a mix?
It kind of depends on the agency.
So they're all different.
Yeah, there's jockeying within the agencies as well as like who's going to control buy over the long term, right? Whether it's going to be the TV buy leveraging into digital, or whether the digital guys really have the expertise to efficiently allocate that spend. But the savvy agencies actually are using both, right? So they're using their broadcast spend to get deep relationships with the content publishers and advertisers that then amortize into really interesting and effective digital campaigns that may run on a connected TV or on a platform tablet.
So it's running through the whole agency.
Yeah. Right, Lori, what we're seeing is the the most forward-thinking agencies are jumping all over this. Chris Allen was talking about it on the first panel, breaking down the silos or just finding ladders that can go across the silos because, guys, advertisers can't deal with all this.
Yeah.
They need their agencies desperately to
Yeah.
get deep into this and get systems that can connect to the sales side systems so that they can actually make it part of the entire buy. And we are seeing almost all of our clients jump on this, and we're going to be there to help them.
I find that there's a lot of interest from the client level, especially in the smart TV space, because we're really the only place you can come now to buy scale across smart televisions. And we've gotten such great response from that. We're meeting with CMOs. They want to understand this. And, again, we've built out the creativity component to this. But for us, it's all about starting with the advertiser experience and then building that out across the different platforms, going back into that experience. And some advertisers are much better than others, but we're finding those that are able to get their budgets together and able to spend and get creative with us, if we get involved in the process early, those advertisers are able to make a huge impact in the marketplace.
Because they're first movers. And
Right.
I think one of the most interesting struggles that you'll see within the creative agencies right now is that we talk a lot about cross-platform, and that's really just I think a lot of people imprint on cross-platform, well, just a repurposing of media across multiple different channels. But what's really happening then is the funnel itself is kind of collapsing a little bit. So you have awareness, perception, intent, purchase, loyalty, advocacy is becoming all rolled into one kind of campaign environment where different types of creative departments would work on different aspects of the funnel previously. Now it's got to be all tied. We see video as obviously one of the biggest anchors in the awareness pipe, but that can very quickly with connection into what they're doing in social media turn into advocacy very very quickly and in real time. So that ends up being a challenge for the agency in that they have to start thinking holistically about every aspect of the funnel on a per campaign basis, not just on a per goal or per objective basis.
Well, that brings up a good question about data. Just in general, in this real-time world, what data is significant? What are advertisers asking for? So let's start with Jeff again. And while you're helping to bridge the gap again in these different broadband broadcast ecosystems, are you starting to get asked for different types of metadata tracking? Like what are the top things that are bubbling up for folks?
I think for the networks, they at the very minimum need the basic data in the ad calls that would allow them to work the way they're working online. So online, they know, if you're watching an episode of a given series, that's the series that you're watching. And the question ends up becoming, how does that same information, the series information, which actually isn't in Cable Labs metadata for VOD, how do you get that information filtered into an ad call so that that existing ad serving system can do its job? And then how do we connect once that decision gets delivered and after the stream is torn down or whatever? How do we convert the status notifications back into the pixel tracking call so that it's a totally seamless experience from the network ad ops team, so that they can see it in either DFP or freewheel or Omniture or whatever it is, and then the MSO or Canoe may opt to sell a little bit more data, device information, potentially some profile information, some Prism information.
We love profile information.
Right. And how does that information make its way in, again, so that it's compatible with whatever ad server is being used? You could have 5 different networks using the same vendor for serving ads, but the way in which they've configured their ad operations, the tags are all different, so you have to manage the translation of all that, and that's what we're seeing right now.
The data discussion is such a frustrating one because
Right.
if you look at, collectively our platforms, and certainly ours, I'll speak for ours, that we've got set-top box data now from such a high percentage of our footprint. We've got IP data delivered, IP
But
metrics.
do you give it to the advertisers? Or
Sure, we do, and it's almost like be careful what you ask for because we have so much data and we can organize it in such a way that shows exactly how many people are watching an asset, how many people are clicking through, how many impressions you get. We know exactly how many people go to the guide on any
Do you know
given
when I
basis.
went to get a sandwich?
I do. I know what you had for dinner last night. I know.
Right,
But the
don't tell
frustrating
anyone.
thing is, if you look at the medium, the advertisers ask for it, we give it to them, yet they spend money in other mediums which are not quantifiable. And,
Right.
it's frustrating no matter what side you're on.
No, that is actually frustrating to me too because there's this weird thing with the media side where they know what broadband can deliver on data, and then on the broadcast side they're used to sort of the pretend data,
Right.
and then they expect.
The pretend. Yes.
I love it. I'm talking
I
about.
didn't say it. She did.
Anyone
The
from Nielsen in
required,
the audience? Anyone
But
from
then
Nielsen?
when you
required
talk
Nielsen bashing.
right, but when you talk digital to them,
Yeah.
they expect digital to have both.
Right.
And so there's this real thing. But so I'm curious about also, because a lot of what I'm looking at right now is what's the value of a like in Facebook in these environments? What's the value of a Twitter mention? How do you start to incorporate, let's just call it modern metrics?
Where does that fit? in the
I
tunnel?
don't want to too much denigrate the $71 billion that's still being spent on TV, even though because look, when you talk to P&G, who
Yeah.
are
Yeah.
actually good at understanding this voodoo
Yeah.
data, they've been running television for a long, long time, and they know that how to sell more pert.
Yeah.
You know?
I'm not even talking about TV. I'm talking about billboards, or you
Yeah.
can talk about media or a cinemedia advertising. You go to the theater, and it's based on number of ticket sales, and you're making some pretty big leaps of how many people are watching that on the screen, or how many people see a bus card in New York and will remember your product, and how much money is dumped into that versus, hey, look, we can give you a report. We know that this number of people are watching in real time. That's the part of the frustrating discussion for me.
Because they're not used to
Well,
that, right?
I guess that doesn't frustrate me as much because those are such smaller budgets compared to like what we're doing online. The real big budgets is $71 billion on TV that we want to.
I wouldn't
solve the
sneeze it
problem
outdoor. That's not a small budget.
Fight,
if you
fight.
can, if you can get a couple percentage points of that, I bet you'd be happy.
Yeah. Again, I think television budgets is what we're really interested in seeing how that that brand marketing actually converts and how the
But
staff.
you mean broadcast when you say when you're saying it, because everything we're talking about could be considered TV. So you're saying the traditional broadcast budget, you want to buy to that.
Yeah, I mean that's of when I talk about $71 billion. The connected TV budget off of as a percentage of that is actually negligible.
Right.
So,
this year.
wait, I need to call
This year.
Jeff out here on something.
Bring it.
We're going for the first
Go,
side
Harvey.
here. So
No,
listen,
and Harvey is not using his notes, so this
Yeah,
is
yeah,
real,
this
ladies
is
and gentlemen.
real.
This
This
is
is
real
real.
time, Harvey.
now those notes, I practiced those for 6 days. So there's the death of your media. You know what the word is you used? Report. You want to send a report to an agency or an advertiser that you expect them to read to find out how great you are, but they're going to mix that into that spend that Frank's talking about? It's not going to scale until you guys figure out metrics that you're... Actually, it was YuMe, was one of the first companies who kind of turned the light bulb on about a year and a half ago when they were talking about 30-second videos, and they were saying, well, actually, we'd like to have a system where we could charge differently for people that watch 10 seconds, 20 seconds, and 30 seconds. And we're going, oh, I guess you can't just count an impression. And you would say, hey, if some like popped up in the middle of that video, then I want to charge, the media wants to charge even more. Sounds good. We got to have systems that can take that data in so that the buying organizations can start to value. There was a great conversation about value in one of the earliest sessions.
Now let's make
Well,
the great
if I can
conversations
defend
here, Harvey.
myself-
Stop
All right.
referring to other panels, damn it.
I use
Well, we're bringing it all together
Come on.
in this panel.
I use the report vernacular in a generic sense.
Yeah.
Obviously, most of what we do right now is virtual. You can pull up a dashboard at any time and see whatever metric you want to look at. It's not a printed report.
Jeff, I'm going right to this dashboard, my other favorite word. So all you have to do, Mr. Buyer, is to sign on to my great system and see all these metrics. When do they?
It's not my
Lord, they have
system.
time? Do they have time for that? Does Media Brands Buyers have time for
No.
that? Absolutely not.
But they're
Until
asking
we-
for it, though. It's not our system.
Experimental. They want to show to advertisers that they're thinking about new things and this and that.
But that's
We've
the
got
core.
to get
That's the core of the issue.
scalable systems
The
around
core of the
it.
issue is what can you give them to switch budgets from other mediums into
Right.
yours. So they need as many metrics as they can, and we can give that to them. But there's no consistent need or request for what format that's in. So we have to slice and dice this in a lot of different ways. So neener.
Well, all right, you guys, but just going back to that one question, because these are all good points, but what is keeping up a lot of advertisers now at night is this idea of what do I do about this whole like thing? And is Twitter really going to be how everyone hears about things? So are we going to be able to, in all these great platforms, because you are moving the mountain now between broadband and broadcast, so what are we going to do about all this new stuff popping up?
Can we just ask you the question? What's the value of a like to you?
Well, it changes with every brand, really, in every category, and it really depends on their campaign and how they've built out their Facebook experience and what their goals are.
So would you prefer to have like 5% of your audience like know that they have liked it or have liked something versus the other 95% that have nothing, over say paying for profile data? I mean, is that something that's of interest to you?
Right. Well, so that's interesting because it will depend on who in the agency you're talking to, because the person in charge of the social media budget would rather have the like data, and then possibly the traditional brand person would rather have the profile data.
And there's the rub.
Yeah.
Is that what I think you have to start thinking about brands in a new way, and that they are actually fungible, right? They're constantly
fungible, ladies and gentlemen. You heard it here. Fungible.
They're constantly expanding and contracting based on what the authentic feedback of user to user is happening out in social media,
Right.
or even in semi-broadcast media like Twitter. So brands that don't realize that, I mean, I consistently say, like, brands decided like a long time ago on the silver bullet theory, where I send an advertisement, somebody hears a message, and they make a product decision.
Right.
That theory is not completely absent now, but it's starting to be degraded.
Yeah.
In that what's happening is the brands are forced to open source their brand in a sense, right? Because their brand is actually has much more
being
important.
determined by the community.
And
Right.
much more important how it's determined by the community, and the ability to which they can leverage the data, and they can break down the walls in the agency between the person who's responsible for brand and the person who's responsible for social and the person who's responsible for digital on TV,
Yeah.
means that they're going to do a better service for their clients.
Yeah.
Most clients that we talk to, as it relates to likes and social networking, there's a really decreasing value in the amount of likes, because what they find is that someone may go there and like something and then never go back or never have interaction with the brand again. There's much more value in sharing video, sharing content, and that's where, I guess, go back to the connected TV space. For us, we have a campaign up and running. You can say, yes, I like this content, or I want to share this with my friends. It's more valuable for an advertiser if they share that with all their 500 friends on Facebook, and that becomes more viral for them.
You mentioned before that the agency has like a social media and then a digital. Does that ever start to blur? Because so I'm like half in this conversation because I don't deal with the agencies, but whatever.
But the half that's in, we all really appreciate.
Right? The most interesting part about my job now, when I'm going to sell a new network or even talk to certain people within the operator community, is figuring out whether or not the people that I'm talking to are on the broadcast side or on the online side. The broadcasters that have coupled VOD or the IPTV distribution onto the digital side versus the broadcast side think in the way of real-time ad insertion, and they're willing to experiment with these existing
Culturally, they
right.
think like that, right?
And the networks that are working this through the existing broadcast side and looking at the distribution and the ad sales on the broadcast side are focusing on the technologies and the platforms that are available within the service provider environment, and that that separation of what is effectively the same business, it's the same video, it's the same the same decisions need to be made. Changes the way in which you have to pitch this. So my question, I guess, is at what point on the agency side, which should conceivably drive a lot of how the ad-supported content gets distributed. Does that start to, integrate horizontally instead of it being a social media budget, a digital budget?
Right, so that's a great question, and I can say from my experience, and actually part of my role as a catalyst is to help that happen. So I'm often in meetings where I say, oh, well, this agency just did the new creative campaign. Why don't we walk over 3 floors down in the same building and show them what you've done, because they're working on the social strategy right now. And wouldn't you think the creative would impact the social strategy? And oh, by the way, the media folks, they're just down the hall. Let's walk over and let me introduce you for the first time to the people selling
Within
the
same
media.
company.
Yeah, within the same company.
It has happened to. I know
Yeah.
it's happened to you. It's happened to me when
Yeah.
you sit down in a meeting room and from the same agency, they're meeting
Yeah.
each other for the first time.
Yeah.
They're introducing each other.
And so that is changing across the board at all the holding companies. They're starting to literally sit them in the same rooms. I mean, it is the decollapsing of the former siloing. Is that a word, decollapsing?
It's re-siloing.
You've heard it here, ladies and gentlemen. World of Schwartz, hashtag Twitter.
Harvey's waiting to jump on that word. He's like reports, decollapse.
Yeah, what I'm basically saying is that you're right. The silos do a disservice to how consumers behave, really. And then you guys are scrambling to create systems on a broken system to a certain extent.
It really does give you an appreciation for the agencies and clients who do it well. Thank God for the 50 or so advertisers or agencies that spend in trial money and trying to figure out what's next in the industry. Because so many times you'll spend weeks and months and years going around an agency trying to find an advocate for what you're selling. And whether that's a small digital property that's just starting or something that's been around for a while, it's difficult to chase your tail. But
is that where you guys, again, who are agency facing, that's where you're finding your movement is in those special budgets?
Definitely with brands that are forward-thinking and prescient. I mean, examples are Ford, Bing. I think has done a great job over the past year on really kind of integrating itself into good digital environments, but also running great brand campaigning. We're seeing a lot out of pharma now. That's very interesting because they have a statutory need actually to do both brand and education.
Right.
So they're driven.
And they have
to,
a lot of dough.
Yeah, they have a lot.
That doesn't hurt.
Exactly. So I do echo Jeff in saying like when you do find those brands and agencies, it's very enlightening and it's very helpful and they understand they're breaking the walls down and they're also coming up with very cool creative ideas that map the top of the funnel awareness to the bottom of the funnel advocacy in real time.
The other part of that, and we mentioned it earlier, but is the creatives in this process are just critical. You can see when you meet with them with a really good creative team and you talk about what they'd call a new canvas, like whether it's a smart TV or just a new property, their eyes light up because they're so tucked into a box in developing digital creative or web creative or video creative. They look at these new platforms and they're like kids in candy shops, and it's really interesting to see.
Yeah, but I will take exception in that there is still that camel hump. Like it's sort of like oh, the water's warm. They go running in. They're like, there are sharks. They're sharks. They go running out because they can't map it into their existing process systems, as Kent has kind of said. And that's really our challenge and what we're trying to make easy. What Jeff's trying to make easy at Rovi, what we're making easy at YuMe, is to try and ease them from experimental into actual process integration and scale. So it's not to say that the audience scale isn't there. It's can they normalize the audience in a way and understand the audience in a way that they can increase their spending scale.
Right.
Well, has anything, I'm going to ask some questions in a second from the audience, but I just wanted to throw out to you guys, all of you representing sort of different pieces of this puzzle. Is there anything that's really surprised you in recent months? Have the MSOs showed more movement in a certain area? I mean, is there anything that's has there been a wave of change at all on any sides of the business that you've noticed that you haven't seen before? Because I just know for myself, people are calling me back. Just being the innovation person, I'm actually now in hot demand. A couple of years ago, it was a lot of let me in. Now it's like I'm all over the place. So, I'm just really popular right now. I mean, I'm a fabulous person, but I'm also just this space now finally seems to me has gotten mainstream. So I'm wondering, is that wave crashing across your worlds as well?
Definitely. I think the general sales cycle for technology, I mean, you would know better than I did, but the sales cycle for technology in the U.S. cable market for us is typically like 2 years, maybe, right? And now suddenly, out of nowhere, like we're doing way more projects. We're like just way like the hockey stick is definitely occurring.
So it's not
just
a
in terms
J.
of
Maybe it's more of a very thin, tiny J.
Lowercase J.
Uncollapsing. All right. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, so it's just surprising,
Yeah.
like what this part of 2011 is looking like now, and for making dynamic ad insertion really work within the service provider environment.
So innovation will come quicker because there's more money being spent,
Sure.
and the players are. And you?
Well, I'm going to leap from advertising and just go to media and
Yeah.
news in particular for a second. We were talking about this in the panel
Yeah.
before. Is that one of my favorite sort of quotes really struck me over the past few months was when Obama announced Osama.
Yeah.
And one tweet was, well, Twitter just had its CNN moment, and then my favorite tweet after that was actually. CNN just had its Twitter moment, and what's really interesting, and the reaction to that is that there's still this hubris and arrogance of this kind of traditional hierarchical distributed media that
Yeah.
we make the call because we are the guardians of authenticity, and what social media and what Twitter proved then, and if you watch the feed, was that as rumors were floating up, they were quickly being batted down by people who had better information. So the crowd itself was giving as in filtering as much authentic information and more authentic information than Wolf Blitzer. So I think that arrogance of that kind of hierarchical authenticity is gone forever. And you've seen elements of it before, and we declared this when YouTube was on the cover of Time, but
Right.
but now it's at the point where there's enough editorial and curation, and there's enough subject matter experts who are actually participating in that filtration process that I don't think there's any turning back.
So it's going to obviously affect everything you guys
That
are
has
doing.
tremendous impact for brands.
And you, Harvey Meister?
Yeah. So surprise moment. We make a Rentrack deal. Take set-top box data into DDS systems. Joe Bandisi writes a headline: Rentrack cracks DDS infrastructure, or some verb like that. It pissed me off. It was his, except here was the surprise moment, the aha moment. He was telling the truth.
Yeah.
And then the calls that I've gotten since then, the DDS has gotten, for people saying, you're really willing to start to take in data that you don't even know yet how it's going to be used? Yeah, that's what we've got to do.
Yeah.
That's what we've got to do to enable.
So you're being pressured to move
It's
faster.
not pressure. It's an openness that people are really welcoming.
More
and
transparency.
It's cool.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, mine is a bunch of little aha moments which lead into a big one, and that is just you mentioned before the pace of change, which is just quickening daily. And I think I don't envy your position in that you have thousands of people coming at you at these different companies and trying to educate the clients. There's a lot of them out there.
Do you feel sorry for me, you mean?
I do, in a good way. I do. I'll buy you a beer later.
I think she's going to make her flight.
I know. But I think that's good news for advertising. I think that the clients are better educated than ever, and I think that they understand the functionality and opportunities that are out there better than ever, which is great.
Do we have any questions up front?
Harold Geller with the 4As. Laura, I know you mentioned earlier about criticizing people for mentioning other panels here, but I'm going to go to one of the other panels that we had yesterday morning. Yesterday morning, we had the first panel was one on content identification. I wanted to get people's perspectives on the panel here as to what's the role of content identification of both ads and long-form content in your various verticals, and what are the barriers that you see to carrying the metadata that comes from unique content identification in your own platforms?
I can speak to that one a little bit. We think that content identification will be a critical component of our business moving forward, primarily in the watermarking and fingerprinting role as it relates to interacting with content. Meaning, we're in a position now, again, where we're the ad platform for a number of the CE manufacturers, and we are working with a number of networks, and we're going to have a number of big announcements, to come. But we think that there's so many different companies out there trying to make hay in this space. A lot of people competing. You need the networks involved. Do you not need the networks? This will be, I think, one of the biggest topics in the next 6 to 12 months, personally.
Okay, let me stop you there. Where the there are unique content, industry-specific content identification schemas today.
Yep.
Why isn't everybody on this panel to be using the industry-specific content identifiers today?
Well, we can make that recommendation, but that's not our call. I mean, that's ultimately up to the content guys, right? I mean, we can certainly, it would be in our interest and everybody else, and we have that conversation, but we don't produce the content, so that's not for us to
So
demand.
you're saying it's in the network's hands?
Yeah, I mean, anybody that produces content, and, you know, we would love to have standards in that. We would love, and we push for that daily, but, you know, it's really not for us to do.
Harvey?
I love ad ID. Harold, you know that. You know, whatever people want to use, we can handle it now. So that's critical.
Whatever people want to use, that in and of itself is a problem. You know, there needs to be some leadership amongst vendors who say, if you use X, Y, and Z, you save money. If you use something else, it's going to cause extra effort. So isn't that a little bit of sort of, you know, we're talking about all of the advances of technology, but we aren't showing our own backbones.
I've lived through 3 versions of Cable Labs metadata. I can tell you that you can advocate it all you want. The networks are going to do it, and the operators are going to do it when they're ready to do it. And the vendors have some influence on saying that they can support it. We can support ad ID in our metadata today. We're just not getting it.
Cable Labs 3.0 is actually does it ad ID right in it.
Yeah. So and we can support it as a trial use field in 1.1 and 2.0 and you know in media RSS. But it's just, you know, it's great in experimentation. When we see it in production, then that's great. But, you know, all you can do is just say, we'll support it.
Anyone else want to jump in? No?
I agree with Jeff and Chris. We'll support. I mean, we support
Chicken.
it. All right. You know, there's nothing you can say. I mean, standards evolve. They reach a breaking point. I mean, was it going to be HD DVD or Blu-ray? And you know, as a content provider, you say, well, you know, I'm going to throw my hat in one basket until the tipping point reaches, and there's actually publishers or content providers getting behind single standards. Then you just have to, as a vendor, go out there and support as much as you can.
Are you having the same conversations with the networks? And how do they respond?
Well, it's chicken and egg. You know, we're now at the point where we're at an inflection point. So both ad ID and IDER are working closely together. There isn't a choice anymore. You know, there used to be ad ID, IDER, ISKI, various other foundational ones. Now, ISAN has disappeared from this market. So there's now ad ID and IDER. So we're now talking, over 700 advertisers using ad ID.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's a question of vendors going to their advertisers and saying, do you use ad ID? If you do, let's actually get the web services, get the interconnection between ad ID and you. There's no cost to a vendor. So we're getting the case where we go to our customers and say, well, hey, what about your vendors? Well, our vendors say we don't need ad ID.
Well, then I would ask him a different question, but I would say that we work with both ad ID and IDER on a daily basis. We can promote that all we want, but at the end of the day, are we going to turn a buy down or turn money down if they support one or the other or neither?
No, but let's use an example of and by the way, I'm happy to come. I don't know if you've spoken to anybody on my ad ID team, but I'm happy to have you come down and talk to us or get our web services tomorrow. And the idea is show the best practice. There are white papers out there today that show there is cost savings, but they have to be proven in the field. So there are, as I say, over 700 advertisers already using it. I'm happy to share that list with anybody on the panel and say, go talk. We will go together with any ad ID user today and say, let's do the interconnection of metadata and show the benefit.
Well,
I'm looking for those case histories every day.
We're clearly letting you down, so why don't you give me your card out?
No. And that's great. And that's
Okay.
exactly what this show is about, by the way, is raising these issues. So I saw a hand up there.
Good to see you.
Look at all the love here. So much love.
Lori, this is really for you because you work with the brands who spend all the money. And I guess what some of us want to know is, what is all this technology and all this new alphabet soup over here doing for accountability and doing for actually scoring success? Does anything change? Do they not know what they don't know? Or are you teaching them as well?
Well, I mean, I'm doing a lot of teaching. In fact, I took Jeff and some of his team members on what I'm calling my roadshow to each of the different North American offices at McCann and having them do lunch and learns, but a twist on it in that they spend time with Rovi more than just a few minutes, but really sitting down with the account teams and brainstorming about how they can achieve their goals. And my advice to a lot of my vendor colleagues has been not to try and hit up the main digital person or the main broadcast person, but to be more tactical and go after a category and go after a particular piece of business client, so that you can go in and really get a great case study, and then that case study can then be shopped around to change minds. But the agency is, most of them I think are in a big transformation period where you're starting to see digital and traditional merge. You're seeing what traditionally were non-digital or non-interactive agencies take on interactive capabilities. And you're seeing the staffing turn and change too, to folks that are Gen X and Gen Y who understand the world that we're living in, and you still need that senior leadership who know their brands. So I think we're in the middle of a big change. It is really challenging for an advertising agency to handle such a fragmented marketplace. And while I can go and say connected TV is coming, they don't care that it's coming. They'll only deal with it when their client calls them up and says, "How come we're not on connected TV?" So there are certain, brands that you have relationships with where there's an advocate inside the brand, and then you can get them to do a test and learn. And so test and learn really is one of still the best ways to get stuff done, and then tie a piece of research to it. If you tie research to anything, clients usually will pay for the research, and then you get your test in, and then you have a case study. So that's been one of my sneaky ways to get things done is throwing in a research piece.
So TV of tomorrow, is that TV of next week or next month or next year?
Well, so that's a great point too. I think the conversation about what to do about tablets is big. I think there's a lot of HTML5 training going on across the board at agencies. I think everyone's trying to understand real-time technologies. I've gone around for the last few months and talked about brands as APIs, and no one knew what API was. So I literally put it on a slide and define it. And so now you have creative agency people who know what an API is. And I had a friend that said, "Oh, you just dropped the API bomb," but it's so it is changing. It's definitely in transformation. And look, I have a lot of friends that are in tiny little boutique agencies that are kicking our butt because we can't move as fast. So it is a very transformative time across the board. It's not only hard for these guys, but it's hard for the people that are supposed to figure out the platforms,
It's connected TV is kind of where mobile was probably 4 years ago. I mean, from a brand perspective as well. When you go in these buying meetings, they're now buying mobile at scale, and mobile video at scale, but they really want to test and learn on connected TV.
Yeah.
Right. So just without being too boring, but when we're sitting there in the
Harvey, you're
pre-speaker
delightful.
room.
How could you say that?
So what's the conversation between the two Jeffs? Do you guys know where we're supposed to send this invoice? So if we don't have that worked out, and by the way, if you tell an agency that they're going off of electronic invoicing, which is over 85% of their broadcast invoices, they're going off of that to paper, they're not going to, or they may want to buy it, but client accounting is to tell them they can't buy it. So we got to get this stuff worked out too.
But what you find is, as Lori said, the smaller boutique shops are really making hay in this space, and they're really driving a lot of this. For better or for worse, they're doing a great job. And that's going to be the issue, what happens.
Yeah, it's just hard to turn a big ship. It's just really, really hard to turn a big ship. But the big ship knows that it needs to turn. And so you're starting to see almost little boutique agencies inside of big ships get born just to figure it all out. So that's definitely something that's happening. More questions?
What percentage of your overall spending think is on traditional media channels versus future TV experiments, et cetera?
Yeah, I'm not actually the buyer and planner, so I couldn't give you numbers, but I can tell you that it doesn't match actual behavior or what people are doing. And that is on every slide I see, they'll show you a chart of what the research says and then where the spend is. So the digital spend is still way behind what's actually happening. And I can follow up with you and get you some percentages. I can ping my media folks and say, give me some numbers, but I'll tell you every presentation, every conversation I have is it's way behind.
I can say appetite for real big brands who are spending the 7 figures for brand campaigns, they'll peel off 5-10% for emerging platform experimentation, test and learn stuff.
Yeah, the
digital.
bigger brands will do like 10% as their thing. But literally, you can look at spend charts, and you'll see that it doesn't match what it says people are doing. But it's getting better. It is getting better. I mean, you are seeing major brands who want to be thought of differently come out and state, we're moving our budgets, right? There's always that press release now, every few months. So anybody? Questions? More questions? So one thing that's been plaguing me, if I can ask you guys, is, and I brought this up yesterday in another panel, but the issue of scale. And because I'm sort of obsessed with scale. And again, you jump in if it feels like this is relevant for you. But I'm wondering about, have you had any conversations where they don't care, where an advertiser doesn't care about scale, in the sense of what we all think scale is? Can we get to a place where niche is okay, or smaller solutions are better?
I would say initially in the connected TV space, we found that we got a number of advertisers on board to do testing, as we've talked about. But scale always comes back to play. No matter how good the functionality is, they always want scale. And like I said, I think.
And how many households is scale for the advertiser you're talking to?
It's interesting. I heard a really good definition of scale a couple weeks ago, and it is as soon as you can beat or equate to the lowest rated television network, you will be taken seriously. As opposed to it's 30 million homes, it's 40 million homes, or whatever. It's really about if they can equate that to television. And I don't know if that's good or bad, but that's the reality. And the reality is now we can do that. So.
There's always been a question about, is there enough scale in VOD for it to really matter for a network? And I think that when you look at what's the cost of distributing a new set of assets and managing a whole new team to talk to a different campaign management tool, it's not quite a business yet, but it's growing. I think if you can take the existing scale of VOD and merge it into your existing digital business, though, it is a business, and it's an interesting business, and it's a growing business, and it's a place for that to really foster and pick up the new data and figure out how to factor that into existing workflows, and I think that's important.
Cool.
I think scale is a lazy planner's scapegoat.
Good for you. So do I.
It is. It's a lazy planner's scapegoat. They say, oh, there's no scale. You know what? There's more scale on the internet than there is on broadcast, but the spend is wildly disproportionate. There's plenty more scale on mobile than the spend would indicate today. So scale's not the problem there. There's creativity and asset management and tracking end up being some of the problems.
And it's also a new way of thinking about what success is.
Exactly.
Which is a whole nother thing.
Yeah, and it also depends on, again, how you integrate all different levels of the funnel, right? If you can build a strong advocacy community, then you're going to get scale on the awareness side.
Yeah.
Right, and add in to what you just said, and business systems and data,
right,
which is how you correlate all this data is still, I'd say it's the holy grail for agencies and their advertisers to work out.
Yeah. No,
Lots of reports, right?
I think and a dashboard. We need a dashboard too.
Dashboards, reports.
Work through the pain. So we only have a moment or two left. Do you guys want to just talk about maybe what you're working on down the future? Anything that you're allowed to talk about coming up?
I would say from us, if we want to go this way, I would say for us it's about content recognition, things we talked about before, about how do you make video advertising more compelling on the platform. So watermarking, fingerprinting, that type of thing.
Great.
Make things easier to buy. Some good stuff coming in the next 4 or 5 months.
What does it rhyme with? What's coming?
Data.
Frank?
Yeah, look, YuMe's the largest deliverer of video advertisements online, and mobile has really not caught us by surprise, but the amount of advertiser interest now has been robust, and we think that connected TVs are fast on the heels.
So connected TV is the next.
Is the next mobile? Is that?
Giving networks and the MSOs the options to run their business the way they want to run their business. Right?
So putting the power in their hands.
Right, and not having a partner dictate how that business is really going to work.
Got it. Great. Well, I think we're wrapped up. Is there one last question anyone wanted to ask? Otherwise, we'll wrap this puppy up. All right. Well, definitely check out all of our colleagues' platforms, and they'll be sticking around outside. We have another panel in here, correct? So if you want to talk to them, definitely hit them up outside. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much.